I'm going to share a secret with you. I wrote the About section for my channel before I ever covered most of the topics I mentioned there. So, since then I've been trying to make videos about those topics I listed and a couple extra. Or maybe I'm just running out of ideas, so I turned to the About section of my channel to find ideas. Definitely not that. Of course not. So, I've done mythology, linguistics, and philosophy. Now let's do history. Well, this is more anthropology, but still kind of history. Anyway, I especially want to make a video about this since, 1, I can make a series out of it, and 2, it ties into some linguistic topics I want to cover in the future. I'll be making a video about their language, their culture, their religion, and their linguistic descendants, not necessarily in that order. So, let's talk about the Proto-Indo-Europeans. Since this is history/anthropology, we're gonna need a chair. That sounds vaguely familiar. I'm glad to be back in this chair again. It's quite comfortable. The Proto-Indo-Europeans. Who are they, you may ask? If you and your family originate from here, you're probably a descendant of these guys. But you could immigrate from a country where the Proto-Indo-Europeans migrate. No, never mind. Let's start from the beginning. The Proto-Indo-Europeans are a hypothetical ethno-linguistic group whose language, the Proto-Indo-European, colloquially called PIE, is the ancestor of almost all languages in Europe, the Iranian Plateau, and the Indian subcontinent. So, here. They spread pretty fast. Though there are languages and language families from these places that don't come from Proto-Indo-European, such as the Uralic language family, which contains Hungarian and Finnish, and isn't related to— wait, this isn't a language video yet. They're basically just hypothetical, but there's good evidence that they exist. It's mostly linguistic evidence, but I'll cover that in another video. I'm not sure if we should let the linguists make archaeological hypotheses. They'll come up with some pretty crazy stuff. Most knowledge of them is just linguistic reconstruction. Assuming they existed, they probably left behind all sorts of artifacts we just don't know what came from them. They would have lived sometime during the Neolithic period, most likely during the late Neolithic, which is around the 4th millennium BC. If you didn't know, writing didn't exactly exist back then, which makes it a bit harder to find evidence for their existence. There was proto-writing, which looked like this, but the earliest known actual writing was from 3500 BC from Sumer. The Proto-Indo-Europeans probably lived in the pontic-caspian steppe. So, the Ukraine, southern Russia area, they almost certainly would have had writing based on the time period and geographical location. Some archaeologists say that they lived as far back as the early Neolithic, aka 7500 to 5000 BC, and some say that they lived in Anatolia. So if that were the case, they definitely wouldn't have had writing, unless you count what could literally be chicken scratch as writing. But the general consensus is the late Neolithic. So I'm only discussing mainstream hypotheses and alternative ones. There's also the Armenia hypothesis, which says that they came from south of the Caucasus, and people who support this normally support the idea that the Anatolian languages split off from a pre-Proto-Indo-European language that Proto-Indo-European branched off from as well. The Anatolian languages were the first to split off from PIE, but so far there's no evidence that there was some sort of pre-PIE language there that Anatolian languages split off from. Wait, we haven't gotten to the language video yet? I personally think that they came from the pontic-caspian steppe, but I would respect you for believing the other two unless there's evidence that says that's wrong. The other two have good reasons to support their claims, but basically all others are fringe theories without much evidence to back them. Some archaeologists also think that the Proto-Indo-Europeans were not just one tribe, but a group of related tribes. While we're discussing their tribe, archaeologists aren't really sure who the Proto-Indo-European speakers were. Most archaeologists say that they're the Yamnaya culture from here. So, just calling them the Proto-Indo-Europeans isn't very accurate. Well, if you want to go all the way back, all humans are related distantly, including them, since they would be closer in time to when humans first came about. Never mind, Proto-Indo-European speakers is a more accurate term for who they were, since again, we're not entirely sure. But I'll just call them the Proto-Indo-Europeans for simplicity. The main hypothesis for the migration of the Proto-Indo-Europeans looks like this. The magenta is where they came from, the red is how far they got up to 2500 BC, and the orange is where they settled up to 1000 BC. It's called the Kurgan hypothesis, was developed by Otto Schrader and V. Gordon Childe, and was first proposed by Marija Gimbutas. The Proto-Indo-Europeans, based on genetic research, probably were genetically tall, meaning that for their genes and location, they were tall. They're probably dark-eyed, dark-haired, and had a skin color that was light but darker than that of the average European today. While I would really like to cover the language, culture, and religion, all that stuff about the Proto-Indo-Europeans here, I prefer to have videos dedicated to those topics because who wants to have to sit through like 15 minutes of content just to learn about the religion when you don't want to hear about the other stuff? It just makes it easier for someone to find the specific video they're looking for, and that's the way I'd like to format my channel. Now that's another academic area I've covered here. One more box to check off. Next week, I'll make another linguistics video. Hopefully this is enjoyed by everyone because I'm also a history nerd and a bit of an anthropology nerd and archaeology nerd and a nerd of a lot of things. Basically, I'm a polymath, but I hope that this video does well because talking about this makes me excited, especially since it's related to linguistics and I really want to talk about that part since it demonstrates some of the coolest things linguistics has been able to do. My next video about the Proto-Indo-Europeans will be about their language and their religion, which will explain something I like to say. The best way to learn about a culture when you know nothing about them is through their religion and their language. My next video will probably continue the IPA summarized series, but, I may always make a different video if I feel like it. Well, anyway, that's it for this video.